I used my husband's insurance to buy a house for our family. Then my own son told me to sleep in the garage. The words hung in the air that Thanksgiving, forks frozen mid-bite, faces turned to stone. My son Gregory stood tall, confident, as if what he just announced was perfectly reasonable. "Mom's moving to the garage next month," he'd said, like he was simply sharing the weather forecast. I can still feel the heat crawling up my neck, the shame burning my cheeks as 20 pairs of eyes turned to me. Family I'd fed, neighbors I'd known for decades, all witnessing my humiliation at my own dinner table. How does a mother's sacrifice become her punishment? How does the money meant to secure my future after burying my husband become the weapon my own child uses against me? You think you know your children. You think the hands you once bandaged wouldn't be the ones to wound you. But I'm here to tell you, blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. And sometimes the deepest betrayals happen right under your own roof. This isn't just about a house or where I sleep. This is about a son who thought his mother's dignity had a price tag, and how I fought back when he tried to cash it in. If you've ever trusted someone who betrayed you, if you've ever had to choose between peace and justice, this story is for you. Subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next. Also, download your free ebook titled Suspense and Thriller Stories by clicking the link in the pinned comment. I met Franklin Reynolds in the summer of 1979 outside the Oakland Public Library. He was delivering mail, whistling a Marvin Gaye tune, when our eyes locked. His smile hit me like sunshine after rain. 3 months later, we were sitting on his mother's porch swing, planning our future. We married young. I was 22, Franklin 24, in a small church ceremony with more love than money. Our first apartment was barely bigger than a shoebox, but Franklin would dance me around that tiny kitchen like we owned a mansion. "One day, Viv," he'd whisper, "one day we'll have a home with a yard where our kids can play." Franklin kept that promise through 32 years at the Postal Service. Rain, sleet, snow, that man never missed a day. Even when his back ached so bad he could barely stand straight, he'd lace up those regulation shoes and head out before dawn. "The mail doesn't deliver itself," he'd say with a wink. I worked part-time at the library once our children were in school. Between his steady government check and my modest income, we managed to buy a modest 3-bedroom on Maple Street. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. Our oldest, Nathan, came first, serious from the day he was born, always with his nose in a book. Then Kimberly, our firecracker, who questioned everything and kept us on our toes. Gregory arrived 7 years later, our surprise blessing. The baby of the family with Franklin's eyes and my stubborn chin. Every Sunday was sacred in our house. Church in the morning, family dinner at 3. No excuses, no exceptions. Franklin would carve the roast while I'd make the children share their week's achievements. "Education is your inheritance," he'd tell them. "Nobody can take that from you." We weren't rich with money, but we were wealthy in other ways. Our refrigerator door couldn't close properly for all the school awards pinned to it. Our living room echoed with debates about books and politics. Our kitchen table witnessed homework struggles, birthday celebrations, and midnight heart-to-hearts. Franklin was the practical one between us. Every payday, he'd set aside something for emergencies, for college funds, for our eventual retirement. "Life can turn on a dime, Vivian," he'd say, counting out bills at the kitchen table. "We need to be ready when it does." I didn't know then how prophetic those words would be. I didn't understand that he was preparing me for a future without him, a future where I need to protect myself, even from those I loved most. If anything happens to me, he told me once, his voice unusually serious, don't give everything away, not even to the children. They need to build their own lives. You keep yourself secure first. I nodded, not really listening. After all, Franklin was only 58. We had decades ahead of us. Or so I thought. It was a Tuesday evening when my world collapsed. Franklin was making his famous gumbo, the kitchen rich with the smell of sautéed onions and bell peppers. The radio played softly, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and he swayed as he stirred, tasting from the wooden spoon he'd had since before we married. Come taste this, Viv, he called, holding out the spoon. I think it needs more. His face changed. The spoon clattered to the floor. His hand went to his chest, and his eyes, God, his eyes, widened with a fear I'd never seen before. Franklin, I whispered, and then screamed as he crumpled to the floor. The paramedics tried for 27 minutes. I counted every second, praying in fragments, bargaining with God. But Franklin was gone before we reached the hospital. Massive heart attack, they said, nothing anyone could have done. The next weeks passed in a blur of black dresses and casseroles. People came and went. I nodded at appropriate moments, accepted hugs, thanked people for coming. But inside, I was hollow. Nathan flew in from Chicago for the funeral, but had to leave 3 days later. Important meetings he couldn't miss. Kimberly stayed a week, but her kids needed her back home in Atlanta. It was Gregory, my youngest, who stepped up. Every weekend, he and Pamela would drive over with their 4-year-old daughter. They'd bring groceries, fix things around the house, make sure I was eating. Mom, you're losing weight, Gregory would say, his eyes, so like his father's, filled with concern. When the insurance check came, I stared at it for hours. $280,000. The price of my husband's life. After funeral expenses and paying off Franklin's medical bills, I had $250,000 left. It felt obscene somehow, this money appearing while Franklin vanished. It was during one of their weekend visits that Gregory brought up the idea. Mom, this house is too big for you now. The roof needs replacing, the wiring's outdated. Why don't we use Dad's insurance to buy something better, maybe closer to us so we can check on you more easily? I looked around at the home where we'd raised our children, where Franklin's height mark still penciled the kitchen door frame. We could get a duplex, Gregory continued. You live in one side, we live in the other. We'll take care of you. Grief makes you vulnerable. It clouds judgment. It makes you reach for comfort, for connection, for anything that feels like family. We sold my home for $90,000. Combined with the insurance money, we purchased a spacious 5-bedroom house in a quiet suburb for $315,000. The deed went in both our names. For tax purposes, Gregory explained. It'll be easier this way. I trusted him. He was my baby. The first few months felt like a fresh start. The house was beautiful, newer construction, with a finished basement that became my private apartment. It had its own small kitchen, a full bathroom, and a separate entrance. I could have my independence while still being close to family. I contributed $25,000 toward the down payment and helped with the monthly mortgage from my savings. I bought furniture for the common areas, a dining table large enough for holiday gatherings, comfortable sofas for the living room, bookshelves for the den. I even paid $8,000 to have the backyard professionally landscaped so my granddaughter would have a safe place to play. Mom, you didn't have to do all this, Gregory said, but I could see he was pleased. This is our home, I replied. I want it to feel that way. For a while, it did. Sunday dinners became a tradition again. I'd bake cookies with my granddaughter. Pamela and I would share recipes and swap book recommendations. It felt like family should feel. Connected, supportive, whole. Then came the small shifts, so subtle I almost missed them. If I left a coffee mug in the sink upstairs, Pamela would sigh. "I guess some people didn't see the dishwashers empty," she'd say to no one in particular. If I watched TV in the main living room after dinner, she'd check her watch repeatedly until I got the message and retreated downstairs. When I suggested planting a vegetable garden in one corner of the yard, Pamela quickly responded, "We were thinking of putting a playset there for the baby." Gregory noticed these tensions, but chose silence. When I'd catch his eye during one of Pamela's comments, he'd look away, suddenly fascinated by his phone or the ceiling. One evening, I came upstairs for a glass of water and overheard them in the kitchen. I froze in the hallway, not meaning to eavesdrop, but unable to move. "I didn't sign up to live with your mother forever," Pamela hissed. "We need our space. This is our house now, too." Gregory's voice was low, placating. "Just give me time. She'll adjust." "Adjust to what?" Pamela pressed, having her hovering around us constantly, commenting on how I parent, rearranging my kitchen. I tiptoed back downstairs, my water forgotten, my heart racing. Hovering? Commenting? Rearranging? I had been careful to respect their space, to ask before touching anything in their areas. When had I become an intruder in the home my money had purchased? That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every interaction of the past months, wondering where I'd gone wrong. Had I been too present? Not grateful enough? Was I the problem? The next morning, I smiled at breakfast and pretended I hadn't heard a thing. But something had shifted inside me, a small seed of unease taking root. I didn't know then what was already in motion. I couldn't see the plan forming behind closed doors, the conversations happening when I wasn't there. I was still trusting, still believing that blood meant loyalty. I was wrong.
6 months after we moved in, Gregory texted me on a Wednesday afternoon. "Family meeting tonight after dinner. Important stuff to discuss." My first thought was excitement. Maybe they were planning a vacation and wanted me to join. Or perhaps they needed me to watch my granddaughter for a weekend getaway. I made Gregory's favorite lasagna that night. We ate together, Pamela quieter than usual, Gregory checking his phone repeatedly. After clearing the dishes, we gathered in the living room. Gregory stood by the fireplace, hands in his pockets, looking like a man about to jump off a cliff. "Mom," he started, clearing his throat, "Pamela and I have some news. We're expecting again." I clapped my hands together. "That's wonderful! Another grandbaby." Gregory nodded, but didn't smile. "Yes, it's great, but it means we need to make some changes around here. With 2 kids, we'll need more space." I nodded, still smiling. "Of course. We could convert the den into another bedroom or—" Actually, Gregory interrupted, exchanging glances with Pamela. "We were thinking the kids should have the basement rooms. They need the space to play, especially during winter." My smile froze. "The basement? But that's where I live." "We know," Pamela jumped in, her voice artificially bright. "That's why we thought we could renovate the garage for you. Make it really nice. Insulation, heating, maybe even a small kitchenette. It would be temporary, just until we figure out something more permanent." The garage. The detached, concrete-floored garage where we stored holiday decorations and garden tools, where mice scurried along the baseboards in winter, where the temperature dropped to freezing during snow season. "You want me to move into the garage?" I repeated, certain I'd misunderstood. Gregory shifted his weight. "It's not ideal, Mom, but it makes the most sense right now. The kids need space to grow. I looked from my son to his wife, waiting for someone to laugh, to say it was all a joke. No one did. Gregory, I said slowly, my voice steadier than I felt, I bought this house with your father's insurance money. I sold my home of 35 years to make this work, and you're telling me to move into the garage? Pamela folded her arms across her chest. Well, technically, the house is in both of your names, and we're the ones paying the mortgage now. It's only fair we use the main living spaces for our growing family. Only fair. The words hit me like a slap. I'd contributed to the down payment. I'd furnished the common areas. I'd landscaped their yard. I'd cooked their meals and babysat their child. And now I was being asked to live in the garage? For fairness? No, I said, the word surprising even me with its firmness. I will not be moving to the garage. Not now, not ever. Gregory's face hardened. Mom, be reasonable. We need the space. And I need respect, I countered, my voice shaking now. Your children are important, so am I. The meeting ended in stalemate. I returned to my basement apartment and locked the door, something I'd never done before. Sitting on the edge of my bed, I realized with startling clarity that I was no longer safe in this house, not physically, but emotionally. The people I trusted most were trying to diminish me, to reduce my presence, to literally push me to the margins of the home I'd helped create. That night, I cried for the first time since Franklin's funeral, not just for myself, but for what my son had become, someone who could look his mother in the eye and suggest she sleep where the cars once parked. What would you do if your child asked you to move to the garage of a house you paid for? Would you give in for peace, or would you fight for your place? I chose to fight, and that decision would change everything.
The Sunday after the garage proposition, I sat in the back pew at church, barely hearing the sermon. When the congregation filed out, I lingered, waiting until Mrs. Watkins finished chatting with the pastor. Elaine Watkins had been my friend for 15 years, and she was also one of the best real estate attorneys in the county. "Vivian," she said, embracing me, "you look troubled." Over coffee in her office, I laid out everything. The house purchase, the deed arrangement, the garage suggestion. As I spoke, her expression shifted from concern to something harder. "Let me see the paperwork," she said. I brought her the deed the next day. She studied it, her reading glasses perched on her nose, occasionally making notes. Finally, she looked up. "Vivian, this deed is written as joint tenancy with right of survivorship. Do you know what that means?" I shook my head. "It means if you die, your share automatically goes to Gregory, not to your estate, not to be divided among all your children, directly to Gregory. Your other children would have no claim." My stomach dropped. "But he said it was for tax purposes." "This has nothing to do with taxes," she said gently. "This is about inheritance, about who gets the house when you're gone." The realization hit me like cold water. This wasn't just about the garage. This was calculated, planned. My son had structured our home purchase to ensure his siblings would be cut out entirely. "What can I do?" I whispered. "We can file a petition action, force either a buyout or a sale of the property. But Vivian, this will mean legal action against your son." I closed my eyes, Franklin's voice echoing in my head. "Keep yourself secure first." That evening, I called Nathan in Chicago. His reaction was immediate and fierce. "He did what? Mom, this is elder abuse. We need to shut this down now." Kimberly's response was more measured, but equally supportive. "I always thought Gregory was a responsible one. I never imagined he'd try to manipulate you like this." Over the next week, we formed a plan. Nathan would fly in for Thanksgiving, earlier than planned. Kimberly would bring her husband, a financial advisor who could help review my options. I would gather every document related to the house, the original sale agreement, bank statements showing my contributions, receipts for furniture and landscaping. Each night I added to a manila folder, labeled simply House. Mortgage statements, insurance policies, text messages I'd screenshotted. The folder grew thicker, heavier with the weight of betrayal it contained. "Don't confront him yet," Mrs. Watkins advised. "We need to understand the full picture first." The papers I gathered would change everything, but I needed proof, concrete evidence that would make my case undeniable, something that would show this wasn't just a family disagreement, but a deliberate attempt to take advantage of a widow's trust. I didn't know then that Thanksgiving would deliver exactly what I needed.
I spent 3 days preparing for Thanksgiving, channeling my anxiety into cooking. Turkey brining in a bucket, pies cooling on racks, sweet potatoes candied with brown sugar and pecans, Franklin's favorite, a tribute to the man whose absence still ached like a phantom limb. Nathan arrived Tuesday night, grim-faced and protective. Kimberly and her family drove in Wednesday afternoon. Gregory seemed surprised by the full house, but maintained a strained politeness. Pamela was notably quiet, watching me with wary eyes as I directed traffic in the kitchen. By Thursday afternoon, the house filled with the extended family. Franklin's brother and his wife, my sister and her grown children, neighbors who'd become like family over the years. 22 people crowded around tables we'd pushed together in the dining room, the good china gleaming under chandelier light. I'd just served the turkey, golden brown and fragrant, when Gregory stood, tapping his water glass with a spoon. The room quieted, faces turning expectantly. I froze, carving knife in hand. "Before we eat," Gregory announced, "I wanted to share some family news. Pamela and I are expecting our second child in the spring." Congratulations rippled around the table. Pamela smiled tightly, one hand on her still flat stomach. "With the new baby coming, we're making some changes to the house. We'll be renovating the basement for the kids, and Mom will be moving into the garage apartment we're building. Next Thanksgiving, we'll look a little different around here." The silence that followed was absolute. Forks hovered midair. Eyes darted between Gregory and me. My cheeks burned as I realized everyone was witnessing my humiliation. My son announcing to our entire family that I was being relegated to the garage. Nathan's chair scraped back so violently it nearly toppled. "Over my dead body?" he growled. "Excuse me?" Gregory blinked, genuinely surprised by the reaction. "You heard me," Nathan said, voice rising. "You're not putting our mother in a garage. What kind of son does that?" Kimberly leaned forward, eyes flashing. "This is disgusting, Gregory. Mom bought this house with Dad's insurance money. She trusted you, and this is how you repay her?" Pamela jumped in, her voice defensive. "We're the ones paying the mortgage. We need the space for our children." "So your children matter more than the woman who raised your husband? The woman whose money bought this house in the first place?" The room erupted. Franklin's brother demanded to know what was going on. My sister reached for my hand across the table. Neighbors shifted uncomfortably, suddenly very interested in their mashed potatoes. I stood, the room spinning slightly. "Excuse me," I managed, before walking out, down the stairs to my basement apartment. I locked the door, sank onto my bed, and covered my face with shaking hands. Upstairs, the argument continued. Voices rose and fell like waves crashing against a shore. Someone knocked on my door. Kimberly, I think. But I couldn't face anyone. Not yet. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A bank notification. I almost ignored it, but the subject line caught my eye.
Important notice regarding your home equity line. Gregory Reynolds, primary owner. Primary owner? I stared at those words, confusion giving way to dread. With trembling fingers, I opened the email. What I discovered next would tear our family apart completely.
The email referenced a letter that had been mailed to the house. I hadn't seen any bank correspondence, but then Gregory collected the mail most days. The next morning, while Gregory and Pamela took their daughter to the park, I searched. In Gregory's home office, tucked in a drawer beneath tax returns, I found it. A thick envelope from Coastal Federal Bank. Inside was confirmation of a $75,000 home equity loan taken out against our house 3 weeks earlier. The loan documents bore Gregory's signature and a forgery of mine. My hands shook as I read the details. The money wasn't for renovating the basement for the children. It wasn't for building me a nice garage apartment. It was for constructing a rental unit in the backyard, a separate income property that would benefit only Gregory and Pamela. They had leveraged my home, the home purchased with my husband's life insurance, without my knowledge or consent. They had forged my signature, and they were planning to profit from it while relegating me to the garage. I made copies of everything, my mind strangely calm despite the storm in my chest. Then I called Mrs. Watkins. "This changes everything," she said after I explained. "Forgery is criminal. We need to move quickly." Within days, we filed a partition suit demanding either Gregory buy me out of my share of the house or we sell the property and split the proceeds. We also filed a complaint about the fraudulent loan. When Gregory was served with the legal papers, he came storming into my apartment, waving the documents. "How could you do this to me? To your own son? I was trying to build something for our family." I looked at him, this man who shared my blood, but suddenly seemed like a stranger. "No, Gregory," I said quietly. "You were trying to build something on my back. You forged my signature. You took out a loan against my home without telling me, and then you tried to banish me to the garage while you profited from rental income." "It wasn't like that," he insisted, but his eyes shifted away. "The rental unit would have benefited all of us eventually." "All of us? Or just you and Pamela? Because the loan documents don't mention me as a beneficiary. They don't mention your siblings, who would be cut out of their inheritance by your deed arrangement." His face hardened. "You've turned Nathan and Kimberly against me. You've always favored them." "No," I said, the calm in my voice surprising even me. "You did this yourself. You chose greed over respect. You chose deception over honesty. Your father would be ashamed." That last sentence hit him like a physical blow. He left without another word, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. The battle lines were drawn. My family, once whole, now stood divided, with me, Nathan, and Kimberly on one side, and Gregory alone on the other. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal meetings and painful silences. Gregory and Pamela still lived upstairs, but we moved around each other like ghosts, careful never to be in the same room. Nathan returned to Chicago, but called daily. Kimberly sent care packages and researched housing options for me. Mrs. Watkins prepared for our first court date, gathering evidence of my financial contributions and the forged loan documents. "The judge will likely order mediation first," she explained, "but with the forgery evidence, we're in a strong position." I nodded, exhausted by it all. At night, I'd lie awake wondering how we'd reached this point, how my baby boy had become someone capable of such calculation. Then came the development no one expected. One Tuesday afternoon, the house erupted with shouting. I stayed in my apartment, door locked, until the front door slammed and a car screeched out of the driveway. Hours later, A soft knock came at my door. It was Pamela, eyes red-rimmed, holding her daughter's hand. "Can we come in?" she asked, her voice hoarse. Over tea, while the little one played with blocks in the corner, Pamela confessed she'd discovered Gregory had a separate bank account she knew nothing about, an account where he'd been hiding money for years, including part of the home equity loan. "He told me it was for our future," she whispered. "But he lied to me too. I found statements showing transfers to an online gambling site. Thousands of dollars, Vivian. Our savings gone." She was leaving him, taking their daughter and moving in with her sister until she figured out the next steps. "I'm sorry," she said, meeting my eyes for the first time in months. "I didn't know about the forgery. I didn't know he was gambling. I just thought—" "You thought I was in the way," I finished for her. She nodded, tears spilling. "I was wrong." By evening, Pamela and my granddaughter were gone. Gregory returned late, hollow-eyed and defeated. The man who tried to control everyone now controlled nothing. Our mediation date arrived 2 weeks later. We sat across a conference table, me with Mrs. Watkins, Gregory alone. No lawyer. He couldn't afford one anymore. "Mom," he began, voice cracking, "I messed up. I thought I was doing what Dad would want, keeping the family together, building something for the future. But I lost my way." I studied my youngest child, seeing both the man he'd become and the boy he'd been. "Your father wanted security for me," I said quietly, "not control for you." The mediator outlined our options. With the refinance rate set to increase in 3 weeks, time was running out for a clean resolution. Gregory stared at his hands. "What do you want me to do?" The question hung between us, heavy with consequence. What did I want? Justice? Revenge? Or just peace and security, what Franklin had wanted from me all along? My answer would determine not just where I would live, but whether my family could ever heal from this betrayal. "I want my home back," I told Gregory in that mediation room. "Not shared, not compromised, mine." After hours of negotiation, we reached an agreement. Gregory would sign over his share of the house to me in exchange for me assuming the remaining mortgage and forgiving the fraudulent home equity loan. The bank agreed to void the loan once we explained the forgery, though Gregory would need to pay penalties. "It's fair," the mediator said. "Mrs. Reynolds contributed the bulk of the down payment, and Mr. Reynolds has compromised the property with unauthorized debt." Gregory signed the papers without argument. His shoulders slumped in defeat. As the pen scratched across the final document, I felt no triumph, only relief tinged with sadness. "I'll be out by the weekend," he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. Nathan flew in to help with the refinancing process. With his background in finance, he navigated the paperwork maze, ensuring everything was properly transferred to my name alone. He also installed new locks and a security system. Just in case, he said, though we both knew Gregory wouldn't be back. Kimberly took a month's leave from her job and moved in temporarily. She helped me reclaim the upstairs spaces, washing away the lingering tension with fresh paint and rearranged furniture. In the evenings, we'd sit on the back porch with glasses of wine, sometimes talking, sometimes just being. "Are you okay, Mom?" she asked one night, the stars bright above us. "I'm getting there," I answered honestly. "Your father prepared me better than I knew." By spring, the house was fully mine, legally, financially, emotionally. The space that had become a battlefield transformed back into a home, my home, secured not just by locks and deeds, but by the knowledge that I had fought for what was right. Sometimes, standing in the kitchen where Franklin and I had once danced, I could almost hear him whisper, "That's my girl."
12 months can change everything. The house that once felt too big, too empty, too marked by betrayal has become my kingdom. The garage, that concrete box where Gregory tried to banish me, is now a charming rental unit that brings in $1,200 monthly. I hired contractors to transform it with proper insulation, beautiful flooring, and large windows that flood the space with light. My tenant, a young professor at the local college, pays on time and occasionally brings me fresh bread from the bakery near campus. I still live in the basement apartment, but I've made it truly mine, expanding the kitchenette, adding built-in bookshelves for my growing collection, creating a small garden patio outside my private entrance. It's cozy, manageable, and exactly what I need. The upstairs has become Franklin's Haven, a successful Airbnb that stays booked most weekends. Families visiting the area love the spacious bedrooms and child-friendly backyard. Business travelers appreciate the quiet neighborhood and home office space. The extra income covers the mortgage and then some, creating a financial security I never imagined possible at 63. Nathan helped me set up the business side, taxes, insurance, online listings. Kimberly designed the interior spaces, giving each room a theme that honors some aspect of Franklin's life. The postal room features vintage mail artifacts and Franklin's old letter carrier bag mounted in a shadow box. Guests often comment on the personal touches in their reviews. Gregory hit rock bottom after Pamela left. He lost his job, moved into a studio apartment, and struggled with the gambling addiction he'd hidden from all of us. For months, I heard nothing from him except through Nathan, who kept tabs on his brother despite everything. Then, one Sunday afternoon, as I pruned roses in the front yard, a familiar car pulled into the driveway. Gregory stepped out, thinner, his hair flecked with more gray than I remembered. He stood awkwardly by his car, as if unsure he had the right to approach. "Mom," he said, voice catching, "can we talk?" We sat on the porch swing, the same one I'd brought from my old house with Franklin. Gregory spoke haltingly at first, then with increasing steadiness about his journey through therapy, Gamblers Anonymous, and the hard work of rebuilding his life. "I was wrong, Gregory," he said finally, meeting my eyes. "I let greed and pride blind me. I betrayed your trust. I'm so sorry, Mom." I took his hand, the same hand I'd once bandaged when he fell from his bike, the same hand that had signed papers to try to take my home. "I forgive you, Gregory, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. We build from here with clear boundaries and honest hearts." He nodded, tears spilling. "That's all I can ask for." They say blood is thicker than water, but sometimes blood relatives are the ones who wound us deepest. My story isn't unique. Many of you have faced betrayal from those you trusted most. The details may differ, but the pain is universal. What I learned through this ordeal is that family bonds are sacred, but they require both love and wisdom to maintain. Love without boundaries becomes a weapon others can use against you. Wisdom without love becomes cold calculation that destroys connection. Franklin knew this. His advice to keep yourself secure wasn't about money. It was about maintaining my dignity, my independence, my right to be treated with respect. Standing firm for your rights isn't selfish, it's necessary. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to hold them accountable. Today, I have peace, I have security, I have a relationship with my son that, while changed, is built on honesty rather than manipulation. And ironically, I have financial independence I never expected, all because I refused to be pushed into the garage. The garage that was meant to diminish me became the foundation of my independence. The house that was nearly stolen from me now generates income that secures my future. The betrayal that could have broken me instead made me stronger, wiser, more determined. Would you have sued your own child or let it go for peace? Would you have fought back or moved into that garage to keep the family together? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. If my story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own boundaries and relationships, subscribe to hear more true stories of courage, betrayal, and redemption. Don't miss next week's story about a woman who discovered her husband's secret family after 20 years of marriage. And lastly, download your free ebook titled Suspense and Thriller Stories by clicking the link in the pinned comment. Remember, love deeply, but protect yourself fiercely. That's the balance that saves us all.